I'm Harry Hurst, and we're here today with guests, and we'll be representing the Winter Beach Historical Society. So why don't you introduce yourself for us, please?
Bonnie Faye, Wynn McGowan.
Okay. You've been here for a long time, haven't you?
82 years,
Where were you before you came here?
North Florida.
What part?
Right in, just as, if you go up 75, just before you go into the Georgia line, there's a road that you turn off on Road 6. And go back toward the south, the east, and then you're coming into the city limits of Jasper, Florida.
What county is that in?
Hamilton County.
Hamilton County. How did you happen to get from Hamilton County down to Indian River County where you were living on the river?
When my real father was killed by lightning,
And
I think it
what
was
was his name?
my real father, Jody Wynn.
Okay.
He was, Mama didn't know she was expecting me and my twin. So she, I'm sorry. I don't know about that. Only time I talk loud is when I'm mad when I'm young ones. But anyway, when Dad died by lightning, him and 12 colored guys was working in a field and Daddy was foreman over them, according to what Mom told me. And she, whenever she got the news that he had passed, that he had died in that lightning, him and all 12 of the colored guys was killed instantly. They went into the barn, and the lightning struck the building that they were in, and it killed them all. Mama said she heard that car running all night long coming to her. She just knew Daddy was dead. But she did not know that she was expecting me and Donnie Ray when that happened. So when Papa Mac found out that Jody had died, he went to North Florida and got Mom and us kids and brought them down here. Brought all of us down here. And
So the Winns and McDaniels were friends, even though the Winns were living in Hamilton
North
County,
Florida, yeah.
and the McDaniels were living down here on the river in Winter Beach.
Yeah, they were in North Florida for a long time. But Dad wanted to start fishing for a living, and the only way that he could use the gill net was down here.
Now, what kind of work was your father doing when he was hit by lightning?
He was the foreman over a crew where they had growed vegetables and stuff.
What kind of
Just
vegetables?
sell up there. I don't know. Mom didn't tell me.
Okay.
So that I can't answer.
So Mr. McDaniel went up, and with your mother, whom they had known before, and they just moved down here then.
Just moved us and Mom and us kids. There was seven of them ahead of me that my brother, we were born down here. So, but I brought the picture, what did I do with it, of all the Wynn family.
Now, when your mother came down here, did she marry Mr. McDaniel right away?
Yeah. My dad went up there to get her and bring her down here, or stepdad. I'm not
Now,
sure.
Mr. McDaniel had several children already.
He had, I can't remember how many they were.
There was quite a number of them.
Yeah, I think it was around 10, I believe it was.
Somewhere along there.
Mama had 7,
And then they
and
had
then-
several.
yeah, and then they had 4, but 2 lived and 2 died at birth. And Mom and Pop, I call him Pop. And Esther and Jean was the 2 that was born here that lived. They were McDaniels.
So they moved down here, right on the river. I remember the house somewhat, because before your time, some other people lived down there on the river also. It's a big house, and I was never in the house, but I knew it was right on the water, and it was a big framed house.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about that house, please.
It was a church house to begin, it was just one room, big old church house. And when Mom and Dad moved in, well, they partitioned off 2 rooms, one for the girls and one for the boys. And she had 2 beds in each room for for us girls and sleep in and the boys to sleep in, and then Mom and Dad had their beds in the living room. Big old pot-belly stove with a pipe burning outside of the house. They're the living room to keep us warm down there. And a lot of times we were living in the river. But that water would come right up under the house. And at one point, it did come inside of the house at one point.
Now, in those days, it was not uncommon for the houses not to have running water
Right.
or electricity.
Right.
And of course, having been a church, it's even more logical. There would not been running water or electricity in the house at that time. It's very sensible. People understand that. What kind of, you had a stove for heat? Was it an old wooden stove?
Mm-hmm.
Was it a big one or a small one?
It was a pretty good size, and she could put 2 or 3 pots on it and cook.
Okay. Now, of course, some of the McDaniel kids at that time, they were grown and pretty much the way, weren't they?
Joel and James, the 2 younger boys, they were still.
But there were some older than Joel and David.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember going to school with some of them, which we will discuss later.
David was my real brother,
Okay.
and Joel and James was my stepbrother.
Now, you mentioned fishing. You mentioned fishing with a gill net. Some people have no idea what we're talking about. Tell us about gill net fishing.
That's a trick. 400 yards of gill net. I had my boat.
What was a net like?
You've seen a cast net.
I have. Some other people have not, though. They made their own nets, didn't they?
Well, you could buy the webbing at that
Yeah.
point of time, but you had to put the corks, lines, and lids on
Okay.
it.
So we have this long net. Go ahead.
They had the long nets, and Dad had nobody to go out there with him, and at that point of time, he needed somebody. I had just finished the 8th grade there in Winter Beach when the old school was still there. You already know where that was. It was right there close to where you lived.
Of course I
Did Junior Woods fish with your dad?
At one point, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he quit fishing, so that left Dad without any, and all my brothers left. So Dad didn't have nobody else.
So we have a gill net now.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
The gill net, me and my mother hung in and put the cork lines and lead on the gill nets. And Dad had 400 yards on his boat, and then he had me one built. His son Rufus built the boats, and then he said, "What am I gonna do?" He said, "I can't go out there by myself and do anything." So I had just finished 8th grade there in Winter Beach. I said, "Well, Dad," I said, "I'll go fishing with you." He fine. He bought another 400 yards of net, and we hung that one in, me and Mom, and from there on, I was his fisherman, his partner for 33 years at gill netting,
Well,
even after I married him,
normally you would fish at night, would you not?
night or daytime.
Mhm.
I did both.
How big was the boat that you flew in?
It's 18 foot.
That's pretty good size, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Mhm. And you had a place in there where you could put the fish where you caught them, didn't you?
Mhm. There was he had a false forward built in the front, and we just throw the fish in there and put ice on them and put a canvas over it.
Where do you get your ice from?
Archie Smith
Where?
and Sebastian.
Oh, okay. So really, you had to run back and forth to get your fish. Okay. Did the boat have a motor on it, or did you have to row it?
Oh,
So really, that was a lot of hard work you were doing out there. What kind of fish do you remember catching?
mullet, trout, bass, snappers, sheephead, drum, you name it. We caught it all.
Is it true that normally you don't catch a mullet by online?
No, they won't bite a hook.
Any idea why?
I have no idea, but I've never even heard of anybody catching a mullet on the
Neither
river.
have I, and I just wondered why. Now, you had all these fish in ice, okay. Of course, you had some that the family would use, and probably get fish 2 or 3 times a day, which is not uncommon. Now, the extra fish, what'd you do with those?
We sold them to Archie Smith.
Up in Sebastian. And you probably no trouble at all selling the fish you caught, did you?
No, there was no problem at all. You just didn't get anything for them.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, you had to drive up there and back.
Yeah. Mama drove the truck and everything to let him take the fish to Sebastian, her and Dad. And I stayed there and cleaned up the nets and stuff in the boats.
Now, before you got into fishing, I think that Joel,
Joel and James.
he also was in fishing, right?
Uh-huh.
I respected Joel so very much. He would fish all night long, several nights a week sometime. And so therefore he wasn't in school every day, which is understandable. If you're fishing 2 or 3 nights all night long, getting to school is kind of hard. And from the school to your house would be somewhat over a mile.
Way over a mile.
Yeah, well, in those days, the school bus did not go down and pick you up. You had to walk from your house to the school and back. I think the rule was that you had to be more than 2 miles from the bus stop for the bus to pick you up. So it means you had to walk back and forth. So when you look at it with Joel and others who fish in the family, you fish all night long. You want to go to school the next day, and frankly, you're tired. And you got to walk over a mile to get to school. Carry your lunch with you, probably.
Yep, because the 4-lane highways wasn't even
Oh,
there.
no.
It was the old Dixie Road.
The old Dixie Highway, there
Yeah.
wasn't much traffic on that.
Yeah.
So Joel really enjoyed reading, and he really would like to have gone on to school. He certainly was capable enough, but I'm sure he was just plain physically tired, along with David and some others who
Exactly.
worked in the family there. But he finished 8th grade school along with Eutha Bell, who was a year behind him. His brother MJ Wynn had died.
He died at the age of 16.
He died when we were in the 7th or 8th grade, because I remember the school was very involved in the funeral for MJ. And then there was David, and those are the ones I remember particularly. There was Lillian, who was somewhat older.
Lillian was the oldest of us girls.
She was somewhat older, but I know that Ms. McDaniel seemed to be very involved in her family, wasn't she? Didn't she actually take the fish up to be sold sometime?
Yeah, we furnished the school the fish to have a fish fry on Fridays, and that's what paid for mine and Donnie Ray's lunch at the school.
Living on the river, there were hardships, which is understandable. Everybody had hardships in those days, making a living. Tell me the thing that you remembered you enjoyed most of all about growing up on the river.
The fishing with Dad, and the mom took in washing and ironing, and I was standing, one time I wasn't in the river fishing, I was standing at the ironing board ironing the clothes that she took in. I can remember at one point standing in a chair at 3 years old, making homemade biscuits.
Okay, let's go back to ironing now. Washing and ironing. Tell us about how you wash those clothes.
You would have to ask me that.
I know, I'm picking your brain here, because I know also about that now.
We didn't have a washing machine.
Nobody did, honey.
Nobody. She had 2 pots sitting out away closer to the road, away from the house. And she'd fill them up with water and build a fire on them and wash them that way. And we'd stand up there with a pole, jobbing them up and down. And
Okay.
then to pick them out with that stick,
Before you take them out now, what kind of soap did you have?
that I don't remember.
Probably they made their soap out of bacon grease and potash ashes. Because during those years, it was a lean time,
Yeah.
and it was an uncommon, and particularly the war years, that you made your own soap. So you have these big pots out there,
Yeah.
with a fire on them, with water in them. I'm getting some nods in the audience there. Some of us remember that. Some of you younger ones would not, perhaps. Punching the holes. Okay, so they get boiling. They get some dirt at them. Then what?
We'd pick them out and put them over into another tub and rinse them up and down. We had water in there, and she had one of those boards that
Scrub boards.
yeah, whatever it was. But I tore the hide off my fingers
Of
many
course
a
you did.
times, pushing them clothes up and down on that rubber board, trying to get them clean. I come up the hard way,
And then
and
you would,
I enjoyed every time that Mama
Me
and
too.
Dad,
then you would put those through 2 or 3 rinse waters,
yeah.
and then no
We had
automatic
no-
dryer, hang them up with a clothesline.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Still dripping water.
And then you get through, at the end of the day, you go take those down. And some clothes have been starched. You put starch in some of the clothes. Then you take the clothes down, and you take the ones that are starched, you have a bottle like an old soda pop bottle, lit in on it with holes in it, water in there. So you sprinkle those with that water, roll them up,
To
and put
iron
them in a
'em,
container,
yeah.
then iron them. What kind of iron did you have?
One of the kinds that we had to put on an old pot-belly stove and heat them up. We didn't have the electric cords and all like we got today. It was a hard one.
Yeah.
You had to hold the iron with a pad over your hand to keep from burning your hand up.
Yep.
And
You
we,
don't remember none of that, baby.
No,
I
I've
do.
never seen it.
we used to have a piece of wax there too, that if it got too
Yeah,
hot,
if it got
you
too hot on the iron, you could use that wax.
It was wax
to
and
clean
iron
them
on
off.
it.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we all grew up that way. In school, who was your favorite teacher?
Miss Chester.
Why?
She was strict, she was hard on all of us, but she taught us a lesson, how to come up.
What is one thing you remember most of all about that woman? She's one of my favorite people. What's the one thing you remember most vividly about her?
The best thing was when she was the principal of the school and everything, she was strict with all of us. And if we didn't pull the toe, she had a paddle with a hole in it. And when she popped us with that paddle, we knew it. Thank God she never had to hit me.
She didn't have to use it very often, did she?
She never did whip me with it. But I seen my sisters and all get whipped.
Who was your first grade teacher? Ms.
And
Wood?
I can't remember that far
Okay.
back.
Does the name Maggie Kersey ring a bell with you? She might have
Yeah.
been, she taught 3rd and 4th grade.
That was Marie and them's teacher.
Who?
Marie, my sister.
Okay.
She was their teacher.
Looking at all this, we got ready to leave and give it the property on the river. What happened to the house?
They tore it down.
Who bought the property?
I have no idea.
Because across the road from there, Mr. Ben Babb lived. He was there.
Two-story house is still there.
The house is still there.
Yeah.
It's gone through several more owners. But he lived in Maine during the summer, and his mother used to come down with him, and they go back in Maine in the summer and raise, I think, potatoes. I'm not sure, in Maine.
I don't know. I know that we're the ones that, mainly me, I had to go over and spend the night over there because they wouldn't let the old lady stay by herself. And Mama said, "You're the only one I can trust to take care of her, so you're going." She didn't ask me, she said, "You're going." So I'm the one that basically took care of Miss Thompson.
Did you do much of the cooking at that time at home?
We fixed a plate over the house and took it to her.
But I mean, you're cooking with your own family.
Yeah.
Those were long, hard work days, weren't they?
All of us girls pitched in and cooked.
You didn't do much fishing with the fishing pole, did you?
Not like then, I
Not
do
then.
now.
Yeah, but I mean, then you did not, of course.
No,
Did you ever do any shrimping?
yep. We had a box, Dad had made us a great big old box and drilled little wee holes in them. And we set the box down in the river, close to the house on a bunch of grass beds. And we built a square thing with a handle on it, and we put a web in underneath it. And we scooped up our shrimp and put them over in that box. And then we sold them for $5 a dozen,
How much?
5 a dozen.
And of course,
For people to come down and fish.
they catch them for fishing, or some of them catch to read.
Yeah.
Did you ever catch fiddlers?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us
Got
about
bit by many of them too.
bit or
Yeah.
tell us about the fiddlers. What is a fiddler?
It's type
Look
of
crab,
a
it-
crab,
look crab,
it's
isn't it?
type of a crab, but it ain't no bigger than that. And they got a picture on it. And if you grab them, if you go up behind them with the pincher and catch them that way, you can hold them. If you reach down in there, he's gonna bite you, one way or the other. But yeah, I'd break the pincher off and put the fiddler on the hook. Get sheephead and drum, snappers, trout, anything you wanna catch.
Catch the big fish for bigger
Mhm.
fish. Now, behind the house, of course, there were other houses around at
There
that
was no
time.
houses behind us.
Were there many wild animals that you saw there?
Bears and, we heard wildcats and different things like that, yeah. We had a bear on the, east side of the house by the river. Mom and then Dad had a runway board running across that to go from the front porch back to the kitchen door. And he come up on that and walked right by our bedroom windows and
Wow.
got down on the other side and went on out into the woods behind the house. She stood there at the door with a gun
Did
in
you,
case he tried to come in the house.
did you ever see a deer?
No, never did see no deer down there.
Did you have any pets like cats or dogs?
Cats and dogs. Dad had, there was so many cats down there when Dad was still living. He would take the catfish and he would cut them off behind their top fin and save the tail part of it. And he'd have a great big old 5-gallon bucket plumb full of catfish tails. And as soon, the cats could hear Dad's motorboat running. And they knew he was coming in, and you could start seeing them lining that river shore. They're coming in with our boats. I mean, they had to be 50 or 60 cats come up through there. He threw them fish tails out there, and I mean, they were having a ball. They were fighting over them. But he took care of his cats.
Now,
What to do.
of course, the kids were in school during the day, they were fishing at night. What did they do for entertainment besides work?
I was too tired to do anything for entertainment. We didn't have no way of having anything to do.
Did your family go to church?
Yep.
Which church did they go to?
The church right down where I live.
Okay, which is still in operation today, but
Yes.
it's not the same church, but it's the same place.
It's the same church, yeah, that man, I can't think, I'm trying to think of the pastor's name that built that church.
Bradley was there, and then River of White, I think River of White's there now, if I remember correctly. But it's right there, down the road from, but if we know where that is, yes,
Wasn't there?
Right.
Who'd you say?
White. I remember I knew a White,
I don't remember
Mm.
him.
okay.
Magi,
The angel.
Reverend Magi, you remember?
The angel.
He's the one that built that church. Before there was a building built there, it was a tent was sewed up
Oh, yes.
floor.
Now, during the war years, when it was really hard to get a place to live,
Yeah.
where that church was in that area there, was called Ragville, because they would get these army barracks, which is not much bigger than this room here. They have way up high, they have windows with screens in them, but no glass.
Yep.
There's canvas on the outside that you could let down to protect the inside there. And a lot of people during the war years lived in Ragville, as they referred to it. And it was not derogatory, it's just a matter of the tents may look like Ragville, but that's along that same strip there, area where you live, where Perry and Betty Stacy used to live in that area. The
mhm.
Cruises lived in there.
The parsonage.
Yes,
When Banjo built the church, he also built the house there.
Right next door to
The
it.
parsonage, yeah.
yes.
It got tore down, and so did Stacy's house, and so did Mary Ellen Lawson's house.
Ooh.
Growing up that area, can you think of anything that was most meaningful to you that's made a difference in your life?
The neighbors and stuff that lived there, we all, just like we were family, and all of us,
Who were some of the,
including your mom.
oh yes, who were some of the neighbors you knew?
Who?
Some of the neighbors that you remember?
Well, you had Miss Gargett,
Yeah,
Ms.
Ms. Roddenberry.
Roddenberry, and Granny, we called her.
What?
We called her Granny.
Yeah, of course, next, not far from you was Stace's.
And Mary Lawson was right next to me
Mm-hmm,
on that side. Travis and Ruby Cruz,
mm-hmm.
Myrtle and Ephraim Darley. And then,
Later on, Buddy's house, there on the corner, Buddy Walker's house,
yeah,
much later, yeah.
that house got built, I think, after Mom passed away.
Oh, I think so, I think you're right there. Mhm.
Yeah, because Walkers used to live where the packing house is sitting. That's where all their boys was raised up at.
You know, looking back, even though people think it was hard times, we didn't think it was hard times, it was life, and
It was
you
life,
lived,
and you just lived with it.
you did what you had to do,
Yeah.
and you didn't think of yourself as being any worse off than anybody else or any better off. Everybody's in the same boat. It's called survival.
Mhm.
You trusted each other, you got along. It's been so good to have you here today, we really do, and hope that you'll come back again.
Yeah, I got no reason not to.
Our pleasure to have you here, thank you so much.